Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansaberry.
And Amy Cornell.
And I think this show is going to hit, if I have not missed our podcast release calendar, I think this show hits on Valentine's Day. So I apologize.
That's cheery.
I know. We're super cheery on Valentine's Day is my book 10. No, so just, if Valentine's Day is difficult for you or really special for you, maybe save this for Saturday.
There you go.
I want to give a little bit of context to this show and also just a really exciting announcement. The interior and cover person is starting to work on the Amazon Author Formula workbook. So I'm really stoked about that. Like, it's finally, like, it feels, books go through stages where people are like, are you done with your book yet? And you're never really done, which I know we talk about a lot on the show. Like, even when you're done, I mean, it's up on Amazon, you're like, okay, I'm done with my book. You're actually not really done, right? But
right.
You're done in stages. So it's with the cover person, it's with the interior person. I'm really excited. I'm thrilled that it's coming out. And I am really excited about my author journal slash planner. It's kind of in limbo in between the two. I'm really excited. I have something I've been wanting to do for years. So that is also in process. So a lot of exciting things coming. Hopefully I have now raised the vibration of this podcast. If y'all felt like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're talking about this on Valentine's Day. Let me give some context to the show. This is not a show about giving up at all. This is just based on what Amy and I hear a lot from authors. A lot of times I hear them on the front end. Sometimes Amy hears them when she's vetting authors to get on my calendar. We hear this question a lot, like, should I give up on my book? And this is not I don't want to put anybody on the ledge on Happy Valentine's Day, but this is not if you hear one of these points, you're just like, oh my gosh, Amy and Penny said that blah, blah, and I should give up on my book. I want to, if you haven't listened for a while and you missed, and you weren't aware, we did an author checklist episode. So I want to refer back to that episode after you listen to this one, because if any of these resonates with you, there might be a bigger, broader issue that doesn't necessarily mean you should give up on your book. So I hope that was enough of a disclaimer for this show.
Right. Yes. It's the exact opposite, right, Penny? We're trying to talk you back off the ledge. If you resonate with any of these, we want to give you reasons to why, nope, you can turn this around. You know what I mean? It's just about shifting your focus.
Yeah, exactly. Because we do get that question. As I mentioned, we do get, should I give up on my book a lot? And in the majority of cases, the answer is no. But authors get stuck in this on this path of, my book is not good enough. My book is not good enough. I'm missing the mark. And this episode is designed to kind of explore what you think you might be missing versus what the reality of that really is. So hopefully this will inspire you to keep going, as opposed to saying, oh my gosh, Amy and Betty are awful. I hate them. And then we get blasted with a bunch of negative reviews on iTunes. Anyway, Amy, do you want to kick this off?
Sure. Let's start with probably the most obvious one,
yes,
which is lack of sales. Yep. We hear that a lot. Authors that are not selling enough books, they're like, I don't know if this is worth it.
Yep.
I don't know if I care about what I'm doing wrong anymore, but it's like, you should care. There usually are ways to turn that around. We talk about it a lot, but in case it needs to be said again, books don't sell just because you click publish. You know what I mean? It really takes a lot of consistent effort. And anybody that's listened for a while knows that that's not a surprise to you that we would say that. And Penny, you mentioned the checklist was perfect. You really have to make sure your book checks all the boxes in terms of retail saleability. We've done lots of shows on that, so look those up. But bare bones, you have to have a really well done product that's branded well, great cover, description. We won't go into all the things, but all of those things have to be the foundation before you can expect to sell books.
Yeah.
And then the consistency, you have to do consistent marketing and promotion. And we've done a show on this recently. One-off strategies are usually not going to move the needle because you get like a blip and then your book is off the radar again,
Mhm.
So creating a marketing plan, sticking with it in, for at least 3 or 4 months. I mean, your book, you have to give your book longer lead time than that, but stick to a plan for at least 3 to 4 months without making any knee-jerk changes in what you planned out. Just really stick with it and see how that is potentially moving the needle. Because if you're doing the right things and your book looks great, it's a good product, then you will start to see an uptick, and we have a free planner. I'm sure it's in the show notes. If not, you can email us for it. But the next big part of lack of sales, and we say this a lot too, is start writing the next book.
Yes.
It's like, I looked this up, less than 1% of authors establish themselves with a single title.
Yeah.
And y'all can look up examples of this. Like all the big name authors, nobody had that overnight success story that we like to see like in the news. You know what I mean? There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. So unless you're in a really unique position that you only ever need to write one book, and we know there are people out there that have different goals for that one book. If that's not you, get started on your next book before you start thinking of giving up on that series you had planned,
Exactly right.
And then I think the last one, take advantage of every opportunity. We see too many authors decline interviews, opportunities to send and influence their book. And it's probably a lot of times it's like, well, I just don't see the connection, or my book is too expensive to mail. Like, don't get me started on that one.
I know.
Or they don't think the influencer's platform is big enough. But it's like, you are never too successful to say no until you are too successful.
Yeah.
So unless you're sitting there going, I'm making plenty of money, I feel really good about my author name and everybody knows who I am and I'm selling lots of books, say yes to the things,
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And we have had authors who will decline interviews and decline opportunities. And, there was a line from a movie that I actually wrote down just because I thought it was so great. Um, the yeses lead, the yeses lead everywhere. The no's just lead nowhere. And when it comes to taking advantage of opportunities, there's a great story about the Chicken Soup for the Soul guys. So Chicken Soup for the Soul is like everywhere now. And to this day, they never say no to an interview. And I think there is like, I just don't know. I mean, I think if you are accepting an Academy Award, maybe you're maybe you're maybe you're finally at that place where you can sort of decline interviews if it's not the right fit, whatever. But until you get on that stage, say yes to everything.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And don't judge, like, because you could always be missing something. So I think, take a step back from the lack of sales first, and then take a look at what your goals are, because unrealistic goals is something that we see, and Amy and I could do an entire show, actually probably an entire year of shows on unrealistic goals, because we see that a lot. And I think that if you're in any kind of a Facebook group, especially, not to like diss on Facebook at all, or writers groups in Facebook, because a lot of authors get a lot of support from these groups, but there is a lot of bragging that goes on in those groups. Well, I just sold $50,000 of the books this month, and I'm like, well, that's really great, but I mean, and I'm very excited for you. And when I see that post, like sometimes I want to write 90 or 95% of the authors that are in this group are now on a ledge somewhere, like, oh my gosh, why am I not selling that many books? And maybe this person is selling that many books and maybe not. One time I got so mad that I actually went to Amazon to check their sales rank. And maybe they're not selling them on Amazon. I don't know. Maybe they're selling them magically through bookstores, like whatever. But the Amazon sales rank was like in the millions. And I'm like, dude, you are so not selling. But I would start some kind of like rage book war on, and probably get written up in Publishers Weekly or something if I just raged on him in Facebook. So take everything with a grain of salt. Like I get it. I think those groups are really helpful. So manage that part of your expectation just in terms of sales. I've had authors that say, like, I'll get on the phone with them and they're like, their book is 2 weeks old. They're like, well, I haven't really sold any books yet and I'm really concerned. I'm like, whoa, Nelly, like, let's just pull it back a little bit, because what have you been doing? Like, did you start early? Do you have a fan base? Do you have, you know what I mean? Unrealistic goals. The other unrealistic goals, and I know we've done a whole show on this, but I just have to say it. And the pounding that you hear is me beating my head against the desk. I got a movie deal, or I have a movie deal in the works, or something, or I want a movie deal, or
somebody's
anything.
interested in my book.
Oh, anything with movie deal in the sentence is an unrealistic goal. I mean, you can look, and again, I'm not, here we are like, oh, Amy and Penny are just not nice people. Like, I get it. Sometimes we do come across as a little bit harsh, but it's great to have big, robust goals. And it's really funny because I was telling Amy about the author workbook / journal that I'm working on. And I said, okay, you're going to hate this part, and then you're going to love this part. And the part that I knew that she would hate was me saying, write down your biggest, most robust goals. Like, write them down, put them down on paper. I want a movie deal. I want a Netflix deal, whatever. Right. And then I said, now this is the part that you're really going to love. Write down the 900 steps that you need to, actionable things that you need to do before you get that movie deal. So unrealistic goals, the majority of people, and we were talking about this in the green room. So Outlander is a great example. You heard about Outlander long before there was a Stars deal in the works. Like, I remember, even though I love the Outlander series, that particular genre of book is not something that I would naturally pick up, but now I'm inclined to read them all because the show is over. But those books had hundreds of thousands of reviews before they were ever picked up. So the majority of these big things don't happen in a vacuum, and they also don't happen if you just have one book, which is, to Amy's point, start writing the next book. So I think I would really sit with your goals and say, okay, is this really realistic based on my platform, based on the fact that I only have one book out, or that I have 2 books out with very low review count, or so. Just reevaluate your goals, and then don't measure your success against something that isn't really realistic. Instead, buy my marketing journal. Just kidding. It's not even out yet, but
he's not kidding though.
No, I'm not kidding. You're right. Instead, take this big, robust, amazing goal, and look, put it on a vision board, write it in your journal, but then make sure that you add to that a list of all of the things that you need to do that pave the way to hitting those particular goals. And I hope I didn't sound preachy, Amy, but
no, it's perfect. I like it.
I just had to, I feel super strongly about unrealistic goals, because authors set themselves up for failure.
Right. And I won't go into it, but there are also companies, services, predatory things out there that make it sound like skipping the line is an option.
Oh, yes.
And it's really not. And Penny and I were actually chatting in the green room about doing a show kind of around that specifically. So you might be seeing that one in the near future. But yeah, skipping the line is really not a thing in this industry. And especially not anymore. When you mentioned my book's been out 2 weeks and I haven't sold any books yet, like the very basic math on that, when people think in those terms, it's like at least 150,000 books have been released in those 2 weeks since your book came out, know?
Exactly.
And, that's not to discourage anybody, but to Penny's point about having realistic goals, you have to realize there's a massive market out there to compete with. and you have to focus on how to set yourself apart and doing all the right things. That is the very baseline of what you
Yeah.
need to be doing.
And you can set yourself apart. You can
Oh yeah.
be different and unique and do really well, but you also have to manage your own expectations
Hmm.
of how long it's going to take.
And I think to your point, Penny, this leads in really well. You mentioned, unrealistic goals. A lot of this has to do with reviews, positive reviews, any big things that have happened for authors. It is astronomical and sometimes shocking how many reviews they have. Like, it still blows my mind. And you think I would know to expect that nowadays, but when you look at some of these books' review numbers, it's like, whoa, like that is impressive. But
Yeah.
negative reviews, that is something that we also hear from authors a lot. They get very discouraged when they start to get negative reviews. And, negative is one thing, but sometimes even authors get upset about 4-star reviews, like, why didn't they love it? Even that
Yeah.
can sometimes be discouraging. And one thing, we want to remind you all listening, you absolutely cannot satisfy everyone. So that is part of this. And I know, Penny, you've mentioned it before. If you put a book out there, you are asking for people to have an experience with that book, and you can't
Yeah.
control what that experience is. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
by the nature of being in this industry, you are putting something out there to be judged.
Yes.
And maybe we forget to think about it in those terms as authors, but it's true. You are putting something out there to be judged and to be experienced, and people are going to talk about it. But what's really important is paying attention to what the reviews are saying, because there's a lot of growth opportunities in that. Are people making relatively legitimate claims about, lack of editing or issues with the storyline, or wishing that the author dug deeper into the character profiles and things like that? Like, are they saying they're just looking for more, or are they, noting that there are actual technical issues with the book? Because obviously that's something that you need to grow from. You can't be
Yeah.
mad at somebody for sharing those kind of thoughts. And then another thing, we've done shows about this too, but getting in front of the right people. Are you sure you're marketing your book to the right kinds of readers?
Yeah.
Because it happens more often than authors think, Penny, I believe. We've talked about this before. Are you targeting the wrong readers? Is your branding somehow misleading? Meaning, does your cover not really match? Is it drawing in the wrong people? Is your description, somewhat misleading in terms of who the book is really for? You want to look at, is your book setting up the right expectations for the readers that really are going to have the most positive experience with it? Because if there's a disconnect there, that's also something that is very much fixable. You just have to dig in and make the changes.
Yeah.
And the last one I want to, kind of discuss is just be very smart and strategic about using sites like NetGalley or one-off pay-to-play review sites, because once you open that door, you can't shut it again.
Yeah.
So as I already said, you're already, by publishing a book, you're asking people to share their opinions about it, to have an experience, to have, you know what I mean? And sometimes these review platforms will open you up to something that you are not prepared for, because by paying for reviews or by putting your book up on NetGalley and getting it out in front of a bunch of people, you're accelerating that process of generating opinions about your book, So
Yeah.
just make sure that you've definitely done your due diligence with putting out a really great product, having a really great editor, all those kind of things, because, once the reviews start coming in, yes, you can learn from them, but you also can't make them go away. So it really is a double-edged sword.
Well, and to your point about learning from reviews, I remember years ago, it was my first year teaching for NYU, and I was flying back and forth to New York, and I was in a hotel, and I want to say that it was Red Hot Internet Publicity, and this blogger he just slammed this book. Like you would think that I had like run over his cat or something. And he came back later and apologized, and he was just like, oh, I had a bad day or something had, gone on. And he modified the review. But overall, as much as I was rocking in a corner and it pained me, I learned a lot from his feedback. So I think it's hard to separate yourself from oh my God, these people just hate me. And look at this and say, oh, maybe, as Amy said, maybe the cover's not right. Maybe I'm misrepresenting this book, which happens surprisingly more than you would think. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's a very
I
good
agree,
point.
Penny. That's a very good, I mean, for those of you listening, you'd be surprised at how often, just based on the initial information that we usually get from an author when they reach out to us, how often I will think just based on the title of the book and what they kind of explain their goals are, because sometimes that is telling in terms of, the topic, genre, whatever. How often I'm surprised when I actually go check out the book on Amazon and go, oh, that's what this book is? So
Yeah,
even just something like the title and the way the author is expressing what their goals are for a book can be very like not, you know what I mean? Not make sense in terms of what the book is presenting on Amazon for a
mhm,
first impression. Let me put it that way.
yep,
So it happened, like Penny said, it happens a lot. So it's definitely worth thinking about that and potentially getting some, constructive feedback on it as well, if you're
yeah,
too close to it.
yeah. It really does. Um, the next one that I would say that we also see a lot is lack of confidence. Um, and I understand that as authors, we're putting out our art, right? Like that's a very personal endeavor. The first book that I ever published, I had nightmares that there was like global hate for the book and that people were literally like running down the street, chasing me, throwing the book at me. I mean, my own book at me, not like throwing the book at me, as they say, throwing my own book at me. It is like I completely understand that this is a really big step. You've dreamt of this, maybe you've done it, you've worked on this book for years or whatever. It doesn't even have to be years. And you feel like, oh, what if this book is not good enough? Let me, and people ask me all the time when I'm on the call, you would be amazed how many times that I get this question. Do you think my book is worth it? Do you think my book is good enough? I That's a very difficult question to answer because first off, I have to spend like just off the cuff, right? So I have to spend time with the book. I have to, read through it. I have to like um I have to, and then, a lot of times if I'll ask the author what their genre is and they don't know, that to me tells me that they really haven't done their due diligence. And I will tell you that we talk a lot about due diligence in this podcast. We have shows about prepping and all of the things. There's a reason that we have those shows and that we have done them sometimes multiple times on the same topic. Because the more prepared you are for publication, the more you will approach this whole process confidently.
Mhm.
I know that I've done, like, we have a reader profile that we give out for free. And if it, as Amy said, about the book marketing planner, if it's not in the show notes, email us at info@amarketingexpert.com and we'll send you a link to it. We have a reader profile. So many authors skip the step of profiling their reader, right? Who did you write the book for? If you have gotten a professional editor and you've done several edits, and I'm a maniac about this, and Amy knows this too. Like I have my book, I have a content edit, I have 2 copy edits. Like I'm a nut because I know that even with all of that, 1 or 2 things will still get left in the book that I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I miss that? So I'm a real maniac about making sure that the book is professionally edited. Um, Another thing is getting early reader feedback. Now, if this is your first book, you're like, oh, I don't really have any readers. Like, I get it. Don't ask your family and friends because we talked about this in our last show. They're not, they're not, and don't ask people in your writers group either. If somebody has to face you, like they don't want to hurt your feelings.
Right.
You literally want, if you're gonna do early reader feedback, you want people that you don't see on a regular basis or that you don't even know. Right.
Mhm.
Um, if you have done all of the prep work for this book, if you've read other books in your genre, if you follow other similar authors, if you have immersed yourself in your topic and you've done all of the things to get like a professional cover design, like please do not design a cover in Word. Thank you very much. Stop it. And don't let, I mean, we mentioned this in the last show. Sometimes I feel like we're just a couple of parrots, like we're just saying the same things. Don't use AI to design your cover. Like just pay somebody to do a professional cover. If you've done all the things, these are all confidence boosters. Trust me. Like, you know that you are showing up to this publishing party with all of the things. And at the end of the day, the book will either grab attention or it won't. And some books that are really, really, really phenomenal don't ever really take off, but it's not for the lack of all of the things that they did to create this book and produce really something that they're really proud of.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents on the lack of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that too, because we see it a lot and we understand that it's natural. But you got to just, like Penny said, I thought that was perfect. Just do the right things and then you don't have to question it,
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Another one we hear a lot, definitely time constraint. And we also get that. Like feeling like you don't have enough time to adequately support your book is very normal. I mean, that's one of the big reasons why we are here, because it's hard sometimes to do all the things on your own, especially for a new book or a book that's coming out. And we're glad that there are so many authors that want to do the right things when they release a book. We love being a part of those collaborations. But like we already said, this is ongoing. It's a high quality problem to have, but your book should require years of your attention because that's how it stays out there. That's how you continue to get new readers. That's how you get new readers for your next book. This is not a one and done, a month after the book comes out. It's like, well, it either works or it doesn't. It's like, no, it's a much longer process than that, but planning is definitely your friend. I already mentioned the free planner that we do. It's a super smart tool. Definitely start using it. And when you start planning things out, it very much is realistic to expect to spend a couple days per month getting things ready for the next few months. You can dedicate a couple days in a few hours those days to pre-generate your content, set up those promotions that you have planned, do your pitching or find more people to pitch in the next coming months, check your Amazon page, make sure everything's up to date. But knowing that you have this planned out and being able to condense those efforts into a smaller chunk of time every month really makes it much more manageable than just kind of constantly working at the end of your rope and going, oh my gosh, I haven't done anything this week. Oh my gosh, I haven't done anything this month. You know what I mean? You don't want to be trying to play catch up all the time because it becomes way too overwhelming and that's not sustainable for competing in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is true. And I think that time constraints, everybody has time constraints. We don't have infinite hours to work on any project. Mapping it out, right? We mentioned the planner tool a bunch of times in this podcast. Plan it out. And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited. I'm sorry, this is really not an early promo for the book marketing journal, but that's one of the reasons why I was so excited about this, because one of the things that I really love doing is I love taking big, robust, exciting goals and breaking them down into manageable pieces. And so when I talked about, unrealistic expectations, those, sorry, for some reason I just this cough, I had to mute myself earlier. Those things can now be part of your list of things that you can do on a daily or weekly basis. So the next one is lack of education. And again, I know we sound repetitive because in last week's episode, we talked about this as well, the importance of education. And I think understanding we all make mistakes. And I tell you, I talk to authors a lot who say, oh my gosh, my first publisher did such a terrible job. They finished my book and then they vanished and I couldn't get anything else done. And like, we get it. I think that learning from your mistakes is a huge part of being successful in this industry. So prioritize your education, listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening to ours. Mm-hmm. And, check. We actually have I think I did it last year. I don't remember, but the blog post on recommendations for other great shows. Mm-hmm. you really do not want, this is not an industry where you can figure it out as you go.
Right.
If you at all can help it. So do your due diligence, spend a little bit of time doing your due diligence and educate, getting some education and understanding what your options are, what your real options are. And then we also have we have a mentorship program, which I know a lot of you have emailed us about. So I'm very excited to get started with some of you. Thank you so much. If you're feeling lost or unsure, that's one of the reasons why we created that mentorship program. I hope that this episode has been really helpful in giving you some insight into, and I hope that the majority of you are saying, no, I shouldn't give up on my book, because that was the goal. That was the origin story of this, the goal of why we wanted to put this podcast together, because we get this question a lot and we know that it's difficult. We hope that this show has been helpful, and as our other shows in the past. If you've just found us, go back. This is our 5th year. We have a lot of content out there. So definitely go back through some of our shows and bookmark us, share the show with somebody that you think could benefit from it. And reviews. We love a review. We just got another review. I don't know who you are, but thank you so much. You're my new best friend.
It was fabulous.
Wasn't it amazing? And Amy called it out. And she was like, oh, you have to see this review. The review is from, so I'm going to call out Betty Pride. And we want to thank you, Betty Pride. And Mary Brose on January 3rd, who said she needed this podcast 5 years ago. So we're so glad to be here. We have, I think this year we're going to hit our 300th episode, which is very exciting. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.